I hope everyone enjoyed their coffee and welcome back. So we're now at the final session of the forum, which is session 8, Embedding Just Transition in National Scenario Frameworks, co-hosted with Brazil under the Global Coalition for Energy Planning, GCEP framework. This session explores how long-term energy scenario approaches can support nationally defined just transition pathways that address socio-economic, workforce, and social protection dimension. The session will be moderated by Reshma Franci, Associate Director for Energy Trilemma and Policy Pathfinding at the World Energy Council. Reshma has over a decade of experience in clean energy and climate policy. She leads the Council's World Energy Trilemma program, which provides global and regional insights on energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. She also oversees the Policy Pathfinding program, engaging stakeholders to design practical policy pathways informed by the Trilemma framework. Previously, Reshma served as a policymaker in the UAE, where she led the creation of the country's first national energy strategy and contributed to its NDC under the Paris Agreement. Reshma, the floor is yours to lead the discussion. Thank you. Please welcome.
Firstly, thanks for that introduction. And I'm happy to be back here. It feels like being back home with the LTS family. We've been together, I think, since almost 6-7 years of this journey. And big thanks to Irina for keeping this going. So it's the last session. I'm going to keep it light, easy, informal. Like I said, it's a family event. We've been here together for 2 days, and very, very interesting and quite packed schedule. So to start off with, the title says it all, Embedding Just Transition in National Scenarios Framework. I think it's the hottest topic at the moment within the scenario circles, because it's about what's catching attention, what's that the decision makers want to hear, want to know. Because all over the world governments are being asked to deliver transitions that are not just fast, but also fair. And with the energy trilemma work, especially on the energy equity piece, we have been on an expedition with our world energy community to identify what defines energy equity, and it is very varied across the world. And also, a lot of what we wished for is not quantifiable. There are a lot of qualitative aspects to the just transition definition, which doesn't always come across in terms of data. And so I think today's panelists are going to really elaborate on how they're doing it, what they're doing right, what are the bright spots within these blind spots that we have within scenario planning. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with inviting Miriam Reiner from IRENA, Program Officer, who is going to help us with scene setting. So she is here online. Hi, Miriam, do you hear us?
Hi, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. So the floor is yours, Miriam. You can take over.
Perfect. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and to say a few words on behalf of IRENA on just energy transitions to set the scene for the session. And I mean, since the inception of the agency, we've looked at the energy transition not just from a technological angle, but also from a socioeconomic perspective. And drawing on this work, I want to focus on 3 main questions. What does the global energy transition picture tell us about the need for international and national action? What do we mean when we talk about just energy transitions? And then what is the role of planning and scenario building in this regard? Next slide, please. Yeah, and one more. Excellent, thank you. So the starting point for just energy transition discussions, as we all know, is that we have an existing energy system that by and large is not sustainable and needs to be fundamentally and rapidly transformed. And as I work a lot in the context of the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, I have framed this here in terms of needing to achieve SDG 7 on affordable energy for all and SDG 13 on climate action. And despite the vast potential that we're seeing, IRENA's analysis shows that the many benefits of the energy transition will not materialize automatically for everybody. This is all the more the case as the transition is taking place in the context of a system that is already deeply unequal. Next slide. As you can see here on the left, renewable energy deployment has accelerated rapidly with capacity additions last year reaching 582 gigawatts, according to IRENA's latest statistics. But the right side of the slide shows us that progress is uneven, with over 85% of capacity installed in just 3 regions, Asia, Europe, and North America. And this concentration, next slide please, is also reflected when we look at the socioeconomic benefits. For instance, while IRENA's modeling projects for the energy transition to create millions of jobs, these will be not necessarily equitably distributed without actions on the national and international level. Next slide. And I want to briefly stay with the theme of jobs, which really is at the heart of many just transition discussions, and how the energy transition impacts jobs depends on a range of structural issues, including existing fossil fuels and commodity dependencies. And as the energy transition progresses, we'll also see a number of misalignments. Job gains and losses may not be happening at the same time scale. New jobs may not be created at the same countries or in the same communities. Skill requirements may differ. In addition, as the session description says, there are questions on who will benefit from the opportunities that we're creating, and how do we make sure that the jobs created will be decent jobs. Next slide, please. And all of these issues bring us to the current discussions around just energy transition and its meaning. And while there is a broad agreement that the energy transition needs to be just, what this means can vary widely depending on the perspective of the person speaking. At IRENA, we've been working on developing a bit of a working definition as a starting point, which includes, as you can see here on the slide, that just energy transition requires the equitable distribution of benefits and burdens built on inclusive processes and decision making, and should address challenges and experiences by affected and marginalized groups, as well as to ensure prevention and reparation of harm that may occur as part of the transition. This in turn, next slide please, asks planners and policymakers to consider a number of issues when approaching policies and scenarios. How do we fairly distribute the benefits and burden? How can we acknowledge the rights and needs of those who have or may be affected? What modalities can enable inclusive decision-making and meaningful participation? And how can we alleviate prior harm and prevent future injustices? And also, how does this play out across time and across different geographies? Scenarios and planning are critical in this context. I don't think I have to tell this to a room of planners. Long-term energy scenarios help governments, businesses, and other stakeholders to evaluate different possible energy futures, and they can highlight the potential economic, environmental, and social impacts of various policy choices. And they can help identify the risks also to specific groups, such as low-income communities, workers in high-carbon industries, or marginalized populations. However, if we look at systematic reviews, we also see that energy modeling does, by and large, remain dominated by cost optimizing narratives. And frequently, they do not account for structural inequalities or social consideration, both in the parameters that underpin the models as well as the consultation process. And this is also why IRENA is convening this session today. Well-designed models along with participatory and inclusive modeling can help to better address these issues and uncover blind spot in the models. Next slide. And there is a new toolkit that the long-term energy scenario team has released, which I'd like to highlight. In particular, in this regard, it's titled Participatory Processes for Strategic Energy Planning, and it aims to help planners and policymakers to better understand possible strategies and approaches for inclusive planning. And while we're at the topic of IRENA's work and tools, in addition to the long-term energy scenarios network, we also have a collaborative framework on just and inclusive energy transition that is co-facilitated by Spain and Sierra Leone. And our modeling team has further undertaken analysis on the global, national, and regional levels. And most recently, and this may be relevant, they've released a new online tool called CMAP, which targets particularly developing countries to help them better understand the possible socioeconomic impacts of the national energy transition scenarios. And so this brings me to the end of my remarks, and let me conclude with a final reflection from the work that we and the discussions that we're having at IRENA about just energy transitions. And it's really how much this is a learning space, a space where nobody has the perfect answer. There's not a single policy, there's not a single scenario or tool that will make the transition just and equitable. But there are many insights emerging in how to prepare and plan for a more just and energy how to plan for a more just energy transition. And we're truly looking forward to hearing from all of you in today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam, for shining light on the framework that could help with the not one size fits all, but a framework which can help guide you through this journey and this process. Our next scene setting speaker is Arnaldo dos Santos Jr., Deputy Head of Energy Economics, EPE Brazil, and he's also going to bring in the Brazilian perspective of defining and addressing just transitions in planning.
I'll say when to pass. Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Arnaldo, Deputy Head of Economics and Demand Studies of EPE. And I'll say a little about our studies on energy poverty and how it impacts. Thank you. How it impacts our long-term plan for Brazil. As Lucas and Gorini earlier said, EPE is an organism linked to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and we produce energy statistics and forecasts to subside the national energy policies for ministry. So our main energy planning products are the 10 years energy plan, and the national plan is for 30 years. The 10 years, we are currently working on the 2035, the PDE, almost finishing, and also almost finishing the PME, the National Energy Plan, 2055. So just to start, Brazil is a very big country, you know, and we have a lot of inequality in Brazil, considering income and a lot of things, but also on access to energy, the energy poverty. And that graph is interesting because we see that the minimum, this section here is the worst one, is equivalent to Morocco when you say about per capita electricity consumption, and the highest one is equivalent to Japan. So we have a lack of consumption of energy in a lot of classes among the country, and it's really concentrated on the most rich ones. So considering that, we develop a map for Brazil in partnership with IDB. That is the Brazilian Observatory of Eradication of Energy Poverty. So what did we do? We studied a lot of bibliographic publications and did a data mapping with more than 30 public databases, identified and defined some indicators. So we had to process that data, that great volume of data, with support of IT, and constructed an integrated databases to construct the map with the indicators on the end of the process. So we are now upgrading the project with new databases, but it's already on the EPE's website. Here's just an example related to clean cooking. Okay, we see here that are the states of Brazil with the worst indices of energy poverty. In this case, is the lack of primary access to clean cooking sources. Much families in Brazil use wood to cook and charcoal, but they don't have access to modern sources of energy like LGP or even electricity. So they have to use wood to cook to survive. So it's related to the poverty itself, considering income. So we can see where the energy poverty is worse in Brazil, so the politics can be directed to the right places to be more efficient. Okay, so in this index, we see that 6.4 of the homes in Brazil are in a case of energy poverty. It's equivalent to almost 5 million homes and 15 million people in Brazil. So you can see them in the OBEP, this map on EPE's website. There are many indicators. This was an example, but we can play with them a lot. So with this map, we have a lot of elements to think about the long-term scenarios for Brazil. So we have this publication, the energy scenarios for Brazil on 2055, that is also published on EPE's website. What did we do? We first, for the construction of the plan, we had the methodology and work plan. So we talked about the scope definition with key questions and the dimensions to be studied in the scenarios, and the future drivers, what will really occur in each scenario, and then the prioritization of uncertainties. For example, really finish in the scenario, or it will become lower on that scenario. And then we have the scenario logic for each one that we designed. And we have a background, very important in considering the energy poverty. That is the sources of energy that we use. For example, we have energy consumption by source of energy and income classes that we mapped for Brazil. It's 2019. It's a picture of Brazil, but it's our start point. The poorer income classes use much more wood, much more firewood and charcoal than the other ones. But when we go to the most rich classes, we start to have consumption of electricity much more, because we have not only for cooking but for air conditioning. It's very, very hot in Brazil. People feel hot. Oh, people feel hot in the worst income classes or on the rich one. It's equal, but only one has air conditioning to fight against it. So we have to do that to see how Brazil is, to have the projection. So we designed 5 scenarios considering enabling factors for the energy transition. One, you can be insufficient and fragmented, or effective and integrated. On the other hand, the governance for a sustainable development model aligned to the climate agenda can be limited and weak, or comprehensive and strong. So we see a scenario that transition for what is that we don't fight against any just transition, forward just transition, and the economy is also very weak during the 30 years. And on the other hand, we have the transition for all, that the economy grows. The structure of the economy is pretty different in the scenario, because many supply changes grow more, and it has inclusive politics for people. The last slide. What was the process that we did to reach during this scenario? We started the scenarios, the logic of the scenarios on the left, with, as I said, with scope definition until the scenarios logic. Then we have the quantitative exercises for each one of the scenarios. So we quantified the economy, then we quantified the energy demand, and this energy demand is analyzed by electric supply and fuel supply. And we have the have in mind the availability of resources, and all is input for an integrated energy planning model. It's called Matriz. It was developed in Brazil. After that, we have the outputs, and we analyze the indicators. After that, we have elements to give to the Ministry of Mines and Energy to design new politics for the long term. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnaldo. And I would request you to join the panel so that we can ask you questions after the next presentation, for which I would like to invite from the other part of the world, that's in Asia. We've got Liza Pangilinan from Philippines. She's the Division Chief for National Renewable Energy Board, Department of Energy, Philippines. Please, let's welcome her.
Thank you, Risma. On behalf of the Department of Energy Philippines, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to IRENA for inviting us to be part of this important dialogue on invading just transition in long-term energy scenario framework. From the Philippine perspective, the just transition is not only a climate imperative, it is a development necessity. As an archipelagic country highly vulnerable to climate change, our energy transition must be inclusive, equitable, and responsive to the socioeconomic realities of our people. No community will be left behind. So energy transition is not only about energy sector. However, visions from other sectors are really included. Sustainable development need collaboration from all stakeholders. By focusing on inclusive stakeholders consultation throughout the process, we ensure all vision and concerns are heard. Retaining capacity for modeling and analysis at country level is important and paramount. Capacity building of local experts and political stakeholders as desired, with intended full handover of analysis and data. Existing long-term scenarios recognize similar drivers of energy demand growth and fall short on incorporating implication of current local energy trend. The LTS will unlock decarbonization opportunities by utilizing emerging technologies and electrified in-use sector. Energy scenarios often only focusing on energy sector implication, forgetting that benefit for society and environment should be at the center. The long-term energy scenario will analyze co-benefit implications of its long-term pathways, especially on health and economy. This is the overview of our LTS in the Philippines. The study adopts a joint fact-finding approach, engaging all stakeholders from diverse backgrounds to collaboratively define energy scenarios and explore pathways for the Philippines' energy transitions. We bring together diverse positions and interests, increase transparency and dialogue between actions, and all interests and concerns are heard and reflected. So with the joint fact-finding approach, stakeholders ranging from national, government, private sector, and civil societies share perspective, allowing for the development of common visions and targets. These discussions incorporate considerations like economic growth, socioeconomic priorities, and emerging technologies, which are then used as inputs for modeling energy scenarios. The modeling and insight, we integrate stakeholders' insight into the modeling process. We quantitatively assess the implications of various scenarios on the power system. This includes addressing key issues such as system flexibility, resource utilization, economics, and energy security. So the outcome of this approach fosters transparency, dialogue, and consensus, ensuring that all interests are reflected. Through structured discussions, stakeholders or the early developers can achieve a sense of ownership over the project, while the scenarios remain grounded in evidence. We move forward. How do we move forward? The structured dialogue balances open input with data-driven modeling, guiding us toward a collaborative and inclusive energy transition for the Philippines. So this is the LTS engagement process we had. The Philippines Department of Energy, in partnership with our Clean, Affordable, and Secure Energy CASE project for Southeast Asia, have been conducting series of bilateral meetings with both energy and non-energy agencies in the Philippines, like the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Transportation, the Climate Change Commission, and the National Youth Commission as our stakeholders. These stakeholders are involved at every stage to ensure an inclusive process and secure buy-in. So based on our multi-stakeholders dialogue, the following are the stakeholders' vision: affordable and reliable electricity supply through prioritizing energy security and reduce fuel import deficiency is deemed as the most important. Stakeholders mentioned that managing indigenous resources is crucial to support the country's economic development. Energy efficiency as an avenue to achieve energy security is one of the stakeholders' input. Social development should be considered at the forefront, which includes competitive electricity price, better energy services, more green jobs, cleaner air, and impact to health. Transitioning towards a green, sustainable, and low-carbon energy by enhancing energy efficiency efforts and harnessing up-top energy resources. Achieving the climate commitment is only them as a co-benefit for majority of Philippine stakeholders. So these are the engagement we had with national government agencies, private companies, and civil societies and RA developers. We all had a multi stakeholders consultation with them that their voices would be heard during the long-term energy scenario analysis. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. If you could also join Arnaldo on the panel, and I'm going to invite the rest of the panel to join us. We start with Lars Jørgen Jensen, who's from the Danish Energy Agency Chief Advisor. As I understand, he's been on many panels before already, familiar to all of you. Please join us here. And then we have got Matthias Paredes Vergara, from Chile, Ministry of Energy Chile, Unit of Planning and Climate Change. And online, we have Unnati Gandhi from Canada, the National Resources Canada, working with the Empowering People Initiative with the Clean Energy Ministry as well. Do you hear us, Unnati?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you very much for joining us. All right. So I made notes on what I've heard so far, and jobs definitely came up. Air quality came up. We had the co-benefits for the economy. There was the granularity brought into the existing ways of measuring. So we are looking at access. We are looking at the average consumption, but breaking it down into further income groups to provide better clarity. And maybe I would start with Arnaldo, with the follow-on question, Arnaldo, in terms of the methodological gaps you still face. I know you've done the granularity of bringing it in, but was that a choice made because there is a methodological gap? Was there a wish for something else you wished you could measure and put in there, but you just couldn't because it doesn't exist at the moment?
Hello. Okay, thank you. We always have to invest in more recent and more detailed data, starting for that. That's because we developed the OBEP, and we're searching for more detailed data as a survey or as existing databases. We had a huge advance with OBEP, but there will be a challenge to develop methodologies to have a forecast of income classes and other methodologies, for example, like the impact of gender and even color. It's an important agenda for us in Brazil. It's also important to develop methodologies to measure the impacts related of the use of new technologies, as we have seen, for example, in Brazil, the air fryer, it didn't exist, and it's we see a lot of people with that, and we don't have data about that. And the bigger access to energy when fighting against energy poverty itself. We are developing also methods to forecast the employees too. It's pretty important. We have some methodology of input-output matrix, but on a scenario of energy transition, we have different structures of economy, and it will be an important impact in Brazil. So there are some things that we are trying to develop it, and we will try that on the next steps.
Thank you, Arnaldo. Maybe I'd go to Lars from the Denmark perspective. In terms of the definition of equity, has it really evolved over time? Have you had to redefine it, let's say in 10 years' time? And therefore, there are new matrices. So, for example, like Arnaldo talked about the new technologies. So, are there new technologies and the impacts of that on equity, which is currently under consideration in the Denmark case?
Thank you very much. Yes, it has to change over time, but it always comes back to some of the basic stuff on what is meant by just transition. So I was actually quite happy that we got a definition up there at some point. And I think what is changing over time is probably also the interpretation of some of those issues that are considered as part of the just transition discussion. And most of all, I was thinking of distributional effects, like what was here called whether the benefits and costs are borne by the same people. In reality, I think that the definition we heard here is a very demanding one, because essentially we are talking about a huge transition of society where we are demanding the losers and the winners to be the same, more or less, or at least to find solutions for the losers. Because there will be losers and winners in any change of this magnitude that we're in the middle of. So I think that's a big demand, but that is really what we're looking for. We're also looking at other things which has to deal with what is just and what is equity, and that is something like, I would say, community resistance and acceptance. Local impacts, whatever they are, social legitimacy and perception of fairness, and particularly the last one, perception of fairness, is a very difficult one. And one of the places where this has changed very much in my country is in a NIMBY discussion, particularly in the last years. In recent years, it's changed a lot with solar PV. It used to be windmills, but now it's solar PV. Solar PV utility level are quite large installations. And if you do that in fairly densely populated countries, then people in the countryside where you have space for that feel very bad about it. So they feel this is not fair, that they should bear the burden of the transition. So what do you do? What we've done is that we have now the government has just suggested that these people can get cheaper electricity. They will get compensation, a larger compensation now than they got before, or if they are nearer, or they shouldn't be as near as they should before. These kind of things. So that's trying to address some of those effects. So this deals with this human and social dimensions of this. Let me just end by an example also, that it is the winners and losers in any big transition. I'm actually a product of that myself. My father installed oil burners until the first oil crisis hit. Then business started going down, and when the second oil crisis hit, he was lost. Right? Then he started working on the local factory, drying with coal. If at that point of time we would have more smart heating installations like heat pumps like we have today, he probably would have done what these guys are doing nowadays. They are installing heat pumps. And this is as a profession of people who install fossil fuel equipment that nowadays are installing modern equipment based on renewable energy. But that requires that the technology is there at the right time. So sometimes winners and losers can be the same, and sometimes it cannot.
Thank you for bringing that story into the conversation, which really connects, right? So it's not just about new jobs being born, but it's about the transferability of skills, if that transitions can happen for different segments of the society. And the social license to operate, it's very interesting that you bring it within the equity element, because in some other contexts, it comes under the security element as well. So if there is no social license to operate in terms of having that in your backyard or access to, let's say, mining areas for critical minerals or so, then it comes into the energy security conversation as well. But thank you for bringing that connection to the community in here. I would like to take the conversation to Unnati, who's here online from Canada, because there is evidence of in your work, in your line of work, of how scenario is feeding into the policy and funding processes as well. So Unnati, if you could shine light on those examples from Canada.
Yes, thank you so much. So here in Canada, we know that the net zero transition is underway, and we're anticipating significant net zero growth across many sectors. And with that comes opportunities and challenges. From a broad picture, we know that hundreds of thousands of jobs will be created in Canada by the end of this decade alone. And it's really important for us to take a sectoral look to understand what the opportunities and challenges are. So in the trades, especially for the green buildings and energy efficiency sectors, we know that we're expecting about 1 million new jobs by the end of 2030. But there's also work to be done on the gap side. As we see in the electricity sector, we're seeing a need for workers, but we're already seeing shortages in the present. So it's kind of like bridging the gap of how do you address the future tomorrow, but also 10 years from now. And then we're also dealing with, sectoral issues, and specifically when it comes to the nuclear sector of the aging workforce, and how do we ensure that we're training the new entrants of the workforce for the net zero economy. So part of our sustainable jobs approach here in Canada is we're trying to ensure that workers have access to the right training opportunities needed for their full participation in the net zero economy. So the government of Canada is doing this in a multitude of ways. And since 2015, we've invested almost $160 billion in clean growth and emissions reduction measures, specifically for skills and training. So a few examples of the different interventions we have is we have a Sustainable Jobs Training Fund, and it's supposed to specifically help mid-career workers who are, looking to use their transferable skills in new green sectors, so like green buildings and EV infrastructure, and it kind of helps them pivot and fills those like critical skills gaps. We also have training interventions specifically for Red Seal workers, which are a really huge component of the just transition narrative. And we bring it from theory to practice by embedding it into Red Seals training. And something we're doing here at Natural Resources Canada is the Science and Technology Internship Program, which specifically helps youth and earlier career professionals through paid internships. And it helps us in the development of the next generation for net zero talent of Canada. So it's through all these different ways, and we try to do a place-based approach. We try to help small and medium enterprises because we know that there's so many aspects to consider to ensure just transition.
Thank you, Unnati. So it's more about taking the numbers from the scenarios into conversations, and
Exactly.
they're all not things which come out of a scenario planning, but it's what else happens with the scenarios, the conversations you go to, and who you have the conversations with. So I think that's the example that you have alluded to. Thank you for that. For Matthias from Chile is always part of the communications of this scenarios. You've been a benchmark. We've heard about your journey here at the LTS multiple times as well. So and that is really built on strong stakeholder participation is what I've understood. So how has this participatory process evolved to integrate this just transition? So what are you hearing around just transitions in these stakeholder conversations? But still, there are some elements there which you couldn't bring into the planning, the socioeconomic impacts, perhaps like the NIMBY effect, like Lars had talked about. So how is it working? What are you hearing from your stakeholders, which you park under just transitions? And then from that list, what are those which you say, this one's challenging. We need new methodologies to approach it.
Okay. Well, I would say, first of all, we have like a paramount on this topic that is called a strategy for socio-ecological just transition. Uh, so, and of course, this paramount strategy was not always there. It was built based on the need of it. And so that's one thing. I also want to highlight that at the Ministry of Energy, we have a particular division that is called something like doesn't matter, but the thing is that the name of it is like a social dialogue, something like that. And then in this particular division, there is a unit that is specialized in methodologies for participatory process. And it's funny because these people are well known across all of the country. So they go to do a participatory process, and then they know these people, you know, that there is some old man, old lady that they know them for 10 years. So they are almost like family now. You know, they treat it really well over the years. So we design participatory processes in-house, and because of that, then we know about all of the progress about the need for just transition. So now we have this paramount strategy at the national level. And this strategy says that we have to develop plans for different zones. There are like transition zones. Usually they are associated with the phase out of coal power plants, which is expected to be completed by 2040. And it has happened really fast, to be honest. So there are places where there were like 500 megawatts of 4 coal power plants that were completely phased out. So that's a lot of jobs that were supposed to be lost. And these strategies say how they should be tackled. So they are tailored to each of these places. So now we have 5 plans for each of these places where coal power plants were located. So that's on how to tackle the problem. Regarding scenarios, we have some particular way to deal with locating candidates that we make like a territorial analysis. So each of the candidates for wind and for solar PV that goes into our modeling is located in a specific territory. So we know where they are, and we generate that surface, you know, of potential based on analyzing, for instance, technical aspects of the territory, such as the slope, for instance. But then we overlap that with sensible areas that we have mapped. So we have several shapes of information, for instance, for indigenous communities, native species. So we overlap with that, and we take most of that out of the possible zones for candidates. So so what goes into the model are places that are not that they don't have these territorial issues. So that's how we deal with it in the models. And then also we have these paramount plans that, of course, have to be taken into consideration when implementing the expansion of our systems.
Thank you, Matthias. What I picked up is that there are humans, the human collective wisdom is part of your participatory process over time. So that collective intelligence is used. Yes, we had a session on artificial intelligence, but here I think you're highlighting that listening to the people on the ground, the human collective wisdom is critical. I would go to Lisa now in terms of, you know, from the Philippines perspective, you've mentioned access and affordability within your presentation as well. Again, the question to Lars, but in the Philippines context is, has that understanding of equity really changed over the past decade? Do you feel that air quality and jobs are very recent additions to your indicators or to those signals coming out of scenarios? And what are those measures that really catch the attention of policymakers?
Thank you, Resma. My understanding of equity in the energy transition has grown beyond just access and affordability. Today, it includes the social inclusion, workforce resilience, and environmental justice. So through the long-term energy scenarios work, we made sure that stakeholders' voices from government to communities shape the pathways we explore. This ensures the transition reflects real needs and priorities. So in the Philippines, we have the strategies to achieve the energy transition. First, to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy, to achieve our our RE target of 35% in the power generation mix by 2030 and 50% by 2040. Number two is the SGGP, the Smart Green Grid Plan to accommodate the renewable energy that will be coming online until 2040. And number three is the infrastructure of the port infrastructure to accommodate the OSW. And number four is the early decommissioning and repurposing of coal-fired power plant. And number five is the mainstreaming of energy efficiency and conservation. And number six, strategies to achieve the clean energy is the decarbonization of transport through the use of electric vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I would go then back to Denmark, Lars, with you in terms of the mechanisms for coordination. So we heard from Unnati where they take the scenarios to certain groups from where programs are born. So what are those mechanisms in the Denmark example for coordination between modelers, the ministers, and social partners? Since it's about the just transition, like who's at the table when you're having these conversations, and what are you saying to them?
Well, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. What we try to do is be transparent, as open as possible, and it is possible to be completely open and transparent. There are really no secrets in what we do, and I think that's the key to being taken serious. And that it's key to just not be seen as an instrument of any government, that you just put forward what you aim to do. You're transparent about it. You have hearings. You invite for meetings. Anyone who additionally asks for another meeting, you just take it. You go to meetings, take with anyone, and this is what we do. We do that when we develop our technology catalogs. We have a formal procedure for involving stakeholders. We do it when we do scenarios. Anyone who wants to talk to us, we try to reach out as well, and we aim at coming up with something which is objective, neutral. And I mean, it's for politicians to use. They can take political decisions based on that, but it's not a political document. So that's the idea of doing that. If you leave that road, if you go down a route of where they start becoming suspicious that what's in that document is under influence of some kind of political desire, then you're dead. I mean, it's so difficult to come back on something like that. Once you don't have your credibility any longer, it takes so long time to get it back. So it's really important to maintain it and to keep on being open and never deviate from that. Otherwise, it's just impossible to get back.
The transparency to build trust. That's really the messaging that Lars is bringing to us. And the similar question goes to Unnati, actually, because you also have the federal structure. So what institutional coordination practices help maintain that continuity and trust that Lars is speaking to? And in that process, how do you constantly keep just transitions on the priority? Like, how do you keep that on the agenda?
No, that's a great question. And I would really like to echo what Lars has said, where our approach in Canada is to maintain accountability and transparency to ensure credibility. And for us in Canada, sustainable jobs, the concept is decent, well-paying, high-quality work. And we want to make sure that our policy and program implements such. And we really highlight aspects of social protection and social dialogue, which are all key aspects of a just transition, as all my fellow panelists have mentioned. So for us, our SJ approach is really rooted in the fact that in June 2024, we reached a landmark achievement, which was the Sustainable Jobs Act, and we passed it into law. And this act kind of consists of multiple elements, which supports our coordination practices and allows just transition to remain relevant throughout their political cycles. So through the act, my team, which is a Sustainable Jobs Secretariat, was created to serve as a knowledge and resources hub for the federal government. So we work across multiple departments because we know that the just transition file spans multiple. It spans energy, it spans natural resources, it spans climate, it spans workforce. So it's really critical for us to maintain that horizontal communication. The Act also legislated the creation of a partnership council, which is a permanent tripartite mechanism for social dialogue here in Canada. Its members, announced just this past February, are from regions across Canada and possess expertise from a range of sectors. So this council was created to provide independent expert advice, and this goes back to like maintaining credibility and meeting with stakeholders, because engagement is such an important aspect of just transition, especially when our policies are, impacting real Canadians on the ground. And the work of this partnership council will inform our policy and programming efforts in a way to reflect local realities and needs in a meaningful way. So through the implementation of our legislation and our partnership council, we want to maintain accountability and transparency. And to answer the second part of your question as to how to maintain just transition as a long-term commitment, we've embedded guiding principles into our legislation reflecting the ILO's guidance for just transition. So this includes things that I mentioned, like socioeconomic considerations, local and regional needs, well-being of workers and groups underrepresented in the labor market. And these guiding principles inform the work and the policy development of the Secretariat. The Act also requires the Government of Canada to produce Sustainable Jobs Action Plans every 5 years, starting in 2025. So the iterative nature of these action plans will ensure that our approach remains responsive and relevant as the economy transitions and, as we see new technologies such as AI come into the picture and what it means for workforce implications. Right now, our team is currently developing the first plan for 2026-2030 to be released in early 2026. And we have opened a targeted call for input out to our government and non-government stakeholders to inform the upcoming action plan, because we want to ensure that as many eyes as possible have an idea as to what we are doing and to hear their input. And the last thing I would say, and it's quite timely, is we're sitting on a panel full of our international counterparts, is that international collaboration is also key to advancing just transition. And for an issue such as climate change, it's not something that it can be achieved alone. And as mentioned earlier, I think by Irina's scene setting presentation, that it's clearly it's very much a learning platform. And no one country has the right answer, and we're doing the best with different place-based solutions. And this is where I will highlight the Clean Energy Ministerial Empowering Peoples Initiative, which is co-led by the European Commission in Canada. And it's a place for us to highlight the workforce element, which is needed for the net zero transition, because we have all these incredibly ambitious goals. And in order to deliver on them, we need the workforce that's capable of doing such things. So in that sense, I think international collaboration is always key in moving the needle across for this conversation.
Thank you, Unnati. So legislation is helping you at the moment. It's been said it's quite mature and is able to provide you with that direction. So it's less effort to keep it on the agenda. So it's set on the agenda. Bringing the conversation into to unlocking finance, and Matthias, the question will be to you in terms of what tends to capture the attention of the financiers when it comes to advancing just transition measures within Chile's planning context.
So I would say in the case of finance, it's mostly related to how exhaustive the analysis is. It means that it has to consider environmental remediation, social development, of course, productive development, enablers such as energy access. When you have a just transition that considers all of those elements, you will probably have less social opposition, right, to actually come up with that transition. So I would say that's something that financiers take a look on how exhaustive that just transition is.
Thank you, Matthias. And I would go to Lisa again in terms of to make the economic case for financing. All right. So how is scenario analysis being used in the Philippines context for making the case of funding the different programs for just transition?
For the different programs in the Philippines for the energy transitions, we have our development partners who are willing to offer technical assistance, especially for the development of the OSW. And for the analysis of the LTIS, we have open source. We have open source. We use a mix of data from stakeholders and input to assess social vulnerability and workforce exposure. We use the joint fact-finding approach to ensure our transition scenarios are inclusive, evidence-based, and responsive to the needs of vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's about like highlighting again the different groups who are required. So bringing more granularity to your analysis is what's catching attention. I'm going to give the last question to Arnaldo, and maybe there is maybe 5 minutes to have a question from the audience. So my question to you is on the similar lines, Arnaldo, to have this comparative analysis across the different regions who are on the panel. What feedback have you received when you're using scenarios from the different stakeholder groups? So you've got the governments, you've got the financiers, you've got the society coming forward, civil society, and what indicators do they hope to see, they wish to see in the scenarios to support decision making? What are they asking you for? You're going with a certain set, but then they say, this is missing and I want to have this.
So first of all, the feedback about the observatory was great because we have a lot to see the differences inside Brazil. We always say that there are lots of Brazils inside Brazil. So it's important to see that. And we are working to have more granularity, as she said. And we are implementing on the scenarios. So some agents or even the ministry have some concerns because depending on the scenario, we have more combat of the for the just energy, but how do we create those jobs, those income? So it can be by oil and gas, or we have to invest in more renewable energy, and it will provide some jobs and some income. So that background is the great question that the agents tell us, because depending on the scenario, we will have different realities in Brazil, and we will access the question of just energy justice on different ways.
Thank you, Arnaldo. I think we have time for maybe one question, one or two from the audience. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much for the interesting discussions. I have more a comment rather than a question. I think when it comes to just energy transition, we just keep thinking a lot about the stakeholder engagement, but I think there are also quite some improvements happening on how we do modeling to keep human in the loop and consider just energy transition. I think one of the good examples is the so-called modeling for generating alternatives. That is an approach where it allows you to go deviate a bit from the most optimal solution, like 2% or 5%, and then you start getting a cloud of solution rather than one single solution where you can look at how different elements can change if you just deviate a bit from your optimal solution. So I wanted just to raise that for the modelers and for the discussion later, that there are good scientific work coming out on that, and I think it's good to keep that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Evangelist.
Thank you very much for the nice discussions. I have two questions from the colleagues from Philippines and Brazil. But maybe it's my perception, but many of the jobs at the energy sector are informal jobs, right? So this means that these people are not registered officially in the statistics. So they need some social protection when the investments will be moved from the areas where are these carbon intensive industries to green areas. And my second question to both of you, of course, is that especially Philippines, not so much Brazil, you implement a very ambitious coal phase out target, I think. Also in Chile is the same. But this could entail also some energy supply security concerns, because some of these areas are relying on this electricity, and might be that it needs additional infrastructures and additional, let's say, regulations, not to deteriorate energy access. So what is your comment? What actions are happening there to tackle these challenges? And also, are these included in the stakeholder process, the voices of these informal workers?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the informal job, like the indirect job, there's no access for us to monitor, but we are working closely with the local government unit and our Philippine Statistics Authority to have the data. And for the coal, yes, in the energy mix, coal is still dominating the power energy mix in the Philippines, but we are trying to have the early commissioning or repurposing of coal in the Philippines. Thank you.
Yes, in our case, well, there is something that it's a registration for the long-term energy planning process that I would say that is not that broad, because you have to submit a form. So these people usually are not in that loop. But in most of the processes, participatory processes that are open, or that type of events, we have really well mapped the people who are interested in this participation process. Also, there is another social citizens processes, particularly like to any of these type of strategies that we develop in the state. So there are not only this process, but some other several processes in which they can participate. Regarding coal phase out, although we have a public-private commitment to phase out this voluntarily these power plants, there is some steps that are needed to be accomplished in order to actually disconnect these power plants. And of course, plenty of analysis of is there going to be energy that is unserved demand or not. Even sometimes we have had some date to disconnect those power plants, but it has to be postponed because of this type of analysis. So, and there are two more institutions involved in that. So it's not only like a political will, it's also a very technical issue.
Hello. Yeah, this question is important. In the case of Brazil, we have some coal industry on the south of Brazil that is related to the economy of the cities, and we have so much concern about it because on a scenario of energy transition, it will be extinguished, maybe. So we are studying some kinds of alternatives like CCS or other ways to produce, for example, fertilizers to not affect directly these citizens, these jobs. So we are studying it, but we know the problem and we will try to solve it anyway.
In addition, in addition, the Philippines is looking into incentivizing the coal-fired power plant. So we are in the process of doing some framework to incentivize the coal power plant for early decommissioning. Thank you.
Can I also just bring an example? I mean, Denmark is mostly known for renewable energy, but actually we are an oil and gas producing country. And we've been that for like, I don't know, 30 years or something like that. And one of the very important ports we have in the western part of the country is in a city called Esbjerg. It used to be the center of oil and gas, and that's where all the workers went out to the oil rigs. And that's where they were flying or sailing from. So that was sort of the center of oil and gas production and fisheries. And nowadays, it's an energy center. It hosts around 200 companies and 10,000 people work there, most of them on renewable energy, because nowadays these guys are now working on installing offshore wind farms, offshore windmills, and the skills they had from the oil rigs are very valuable when they install offshore wind farms. So that's a success.
Can I make a follow-up? So this is very important what Lars says, and I think here we have to transfer this knowledge. Also, Germany had a similar discussion with the coal exit. So I think it's a great opportunity through this network of IRENA and other networks that this knowledge passes, and you don't repeat the mistakes that we did here in Europe.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting debate. And we have one last question there, because we're in 3 minutes to close up.
Just a question for the modeling. I want to know if you include or how you're including the energy communities or the democratization of the energy in just scenarios or your planning. And additionally, how you include all of the stuff that you mentioned about the jobs, if it's externally analyzed or is internally into the model. Thank you. Probably quick answer for us.
So, in our case, it's case by case, not in the model, but we know the reality of the region. As I said, Brazil is very big. It's kind of difficult to model everything. So we have to see that specific case to analyze and see a solution for that, as the kind of the coal industry in the south of Brazil, trying specifically. Okay.
For the host communities of the energy projects, we provided them the benefit to host communities. We call them ER1-94. So in every kilowatt, they have compensated if they host a certain project in their area. Thank you.
Does Lars want to comment as well?
I'm not sure the question was for me, really. What was it? No, really. I mean, we try to include anyone relevant. I mean, what is the energy community? And the energy community is huge, right? So yeah, we include any relevant one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are no secrets there.
So in our case, in the case of modeling, I would say we have two models that are very aggregated. One of them works, has a lot of detail, but at a large scale. So I think it's not the best representation of communities, but still we are accounting for the whole system demand. We have some feedback loops for those who are registered to comment our plans. So we have two stages in which they can comment on our preliminary results, which are very important for us. We even rerun our model or adjust them based on those comments. And that's one thing. But by the end of this year, we are going to begin another of this long-term energy planning process, which are fully revised every 5 years. And now we are going to consider 2 units of the Ministry of Energy that are in some other division. One of them is a unit for access to electricity, and another one is a unit for access to heating. So I don't have the answer for how to effectively take those isolated communities in our country into our models, but we will, of course, take a look at the reality of the national supply of energy.
Can I just add a little bit, just an example again? Earlier today, I had to find a number, because I couldn't remember it, a number I was going to use in a question. And then I was trying to find our latest outlook for Energinet, which is the TSO, and I couldn't find it on our own website. And the reason was that it was actually on a hearing website, because it's out now in a hearing process. So it's not even on our own website right now. So this just shows that sometimes you have these processes, and now we're waiting for trying to do the final version based on whatever comments we've had. And of course, we had lots of dialogue throughout the process before leaving it out in an official, not unofficial, official hearing process. So it's like both official processes and unofficial meetings, you may say, or bilateral meetings that we take over the course of a process like that. So that's the way we try to do it.
Yes, briefly, yes.
Brief, and also we have this long-term, like planning of the whole system, but we also have strategical regional plans, which have to be considered in the national level one. So for each region, one of these plans has to be done, and of course it considers participation at the regional level, and then is where these units of the ministry, which are they work really close with the isolated communities, then it's when they can put those insights into these plans, and then they can escalate to our system perspective.
Thank you very much. And I think we've run over. And I want to say a big thank you to the panelists here who've joined us online as well as in person from different parts of the world. Some keywords which I take home: trust, transparency, granularity, and I'm also at ease that the energy trilemma, where we are looking at equity, covers a lot of what you are talking about. So it's still relevant, the definitions still stay, but when you provide more granularity and have better conversations through collective intelligence with the right people on the ground as well, is when you bring out the just transitions into reality. So thank you very much. And special thanks to LTS for putting this together, and to the Global Coalition for Energy Planning, who has brought this to the forefront and continues to drive this forward. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reshma, and thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to the audience for being engaged during the whole session. With that, we have come to the end of all our sessions. Now I would like to invite Simon Ben-Mraz, Head of Energy Planning and IRENA Innovation and Technology Center, to please deliver the welcome remarks. Over to you, Simon.
I hope it's not the welcoming remarks again. Yes. But I'm very, very grateful for you spending the 2 days with us in our office of the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center. I mean, I've organized several events like this, and sometimes people leave the room, but you stayed, you engaged. So this is really the benefit of the network. And I want to thank each of you for the candor and also the depth that you brought to this discussion. Over the past 48 hours, including last night, a clear and powerful consensus has emerged. While our tools are continue to advance, the new landscape, the new geopolitical situation makes that the defining challenge of our work must go beyond pure analytics. We have affirmed today that effective energy planning is as much about institutions and dialogue that it is about models and data. The discussion you had on coordination reaffirm, I think, a critical lesson. The most successful scenarios are those born from early and continuous dialogue across energy, climate, but also finance ministries. We had company examples of our mechanism, from legal mandates to interministerial committees, are providing decisive measures in translating plans into credible investment frameworks and also supporting the building of national budgets. The team also of infrastructure planning brought this into sharp focus yesterday. The session made it clear that the grid expansion plan must be conceived from the onset as a bankable pipeline. The details about, we heard its regulation, clarity, transparent auction systems, and also realistic risk allocation are not secondary consideration. They are the very element to build what we need, investor trust, required to turn a plan into a project. We were also reminded that the most technically elegant scenario will actually fail if it lacks the public legitimacy. A strong lesson from our session of today was that plans which honestly incorporate socio-economic dimension, jobs, affordability, and also land use are the ones most likely to secure the public support needed for long-term political durability. And this is important as many governments change from one side to another. The theme of this afternoon, also with the last session about social legitimacy, was further deepened on the discussion on just transition. It became clear from this discussion, thanks you again for the moderator, that our scenario must function as a tool of anticipatory governance to build the trust, and you mentioned the equity there. And finally, we heard voices on the topic of artificial intelligence, which was, I think, exciting, but also cautionary. It is actually a powerful tool that can accelerate the work on energy planning and long-term energy scenarios, but it brings with it profound governance responsibilities. The discussion you have confirmed that AI adoption must be guided by transparency, human oversight, and a commitment to strengthening, actually, not replacing sovereign national planning capacities. What this forum has ultimately reaffirmed is that long-term energy scenarios are at the heart's instrument of governance. They are the tool to connect ambition with implementation and planning with finance, which is the central mandate of the new Global Coalition for Energy Planning that also will be the center at COP30. The work you all do actually is, I heard many discussion, is actually difficult, complex, and often fraught with uncertainty. Yet, it has never been more vital. The LTS network exists to ensure you do not face those challenges alone. So thank you for your commitments to this essential work, and I wish you a safe journey home and see you next year at the 7th Long-Term Energy Scenario Network events. Thank you very much. And